Question: what is the difference, if any, between race and culture?
Race factors into culture. Both the segmentations that have factored into the division of the human and the communities that arise to support these constructs produce cultural pooling.
I view race in terms of how a person experiences state violence. The concept of race is rooted in colonialism. It was created by the colonial state to distribute power on colonized bodies. I like to look at Latin America to understand the difference. Many people, especially Western white people, think Latino is a race, when in fact it's a term that describes people from Latin America and the Caribbean. In reality, there are many races in Latin America, with folks who partake in a similar culture. There are white Latinos, whose ancestors owned land and people, brown people, indigenous, and Afro-Latinos. I think culture conflates race and derails us from addressing the origins of violence.
Two man-made constructs. Race is a construct to categorize origin and ancestry, perhaps even genetic differences, lineage. Culture is a set of traditions, values, patterns intimately associated with a specific group, while race is often considered a fixed trait. Culture is more environmental and thus can be elective.
Cultures are broader than race. Cultures include ethnicities and subcultures independent of race.
Question: Ralph Ellison once wrote, "I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me." What do you think this means?
To deem what you fear or place as other, those that you do not feel are the same as you.
To Ellison, invisibility is decided by someone else and he must follow suit. Sad truths.
I wonder if it is a refusal to see. Maybe it's a kind of blindness, or maybe I'm being too optimistic. I understand what it feels like to be invisible, but I also believe I've taught some people how to see me and people like me. For those people, I don't think they refuse to see me. They didn't know they could see me like they see themselves.
I imagine it means he felt he was judged by his appearance. Unfortunately, most people probably feel the same way.
Question: code switching, the act of alternating between vernacular slang and standard American English, is often used in non-white communities, particularly in academic and professional settings. Is it a necessary ability, skill? Why or why not?
Yes, it creates a stronger community amongst non-whites.
While the necessity is debatable, it is a practice that connects people of different groups in a sort of standard language. It can help bring different cultures together. Is it right? Who knows?
I think so, because standard English is what professional settings accept and anything else is looked down upon. It's very classist, as though those who speak the standard put themselves above those who use the vernacular.
It is necessary to be adaptable and flexible if communication is a goal. While this can be interpreted as exclusionary by a dominant culture audience, it may be useful within a culture context. Personally, I do not find this any more threatening than slang or specific language used within other subcultures like the art world or the medical world.
I think it would be helpful to have some kind of lingua franca that everyone understands. I think that's what people see standard English as being. The problem lies in the class and race issues buried in the assumptions that the standard must be what's used by white, upper middle class people, and everything else is low or somehow beneath. That's what's fucked up. Wanting a platform that everyone can communicate with is great, but okay, now I'm just repeating myself.
I believe it is necessary in today's academic and professional settings. The quote-unquote system is biased towards standard American English as a basis of weeding out the quote-unquote unintelligent masses. This puts non-white communities at a disadvantage. In a very direct way, it limits one's First Amendment rights. If the media were forced to only use one means of getting the word out, they would protest in the streets. Language is unique to one's culture, and striving to understand those slangs would be more intellectual than ignoring different ways of communicating. This, like many of the other questions, does not seem to have a straightforward answer. Code switching can be a useful skill when communicating with people who have a different language. When the difference in language becomes a representation of the hegemonic power, then code switching can either be a tool for fitting in or fighting back.
I don't know if it is necessary, but it's reassuring to be able to identify and connect with like-minded non-whites in an academic and professional setting through a vernacular slang which sets us apart from the white norm.
As a Spanish-speaking Latina, I am familiar with this experience and would say that unfortunately, yes, it is necessary to code switch in order to navigate a white space. It's a form of survival since the ones in power are predominantly white. I wish we got to a point where code switching wasn't necessary.
Question: what are your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement?
Black Lives Matter is a really important movement for the public to see. Black lives do matter, especially when it comes down to the worth of a black body. Too many black deaths, and they do matter.
It's an incredible use of the hashtag. Very important conversation. Clear indicator of closed-minded people. Hashtag All Lives Matter needed to surface to create the opportunity to discuss where people really stand in regards to racism today. Made the issue very clear to me.
It is a real wake-up call to all Americans, but perhaps more specifically to oblivious white people. The systemic abuse and deadly violence experienced by the black community has been going on unchecked and unquestioned in our country forever. The sad part is many people seem to act like this is news.
I think that it is a necessary catalyst for change in America.
I am encouraged. Things cannot remain the same, and discouraged. How are things still the same?
Black Lives Matter has, for me personally, brought about a heightened state of awareness, not only about the criminal injustices suffered by members of the black community at the hands of American institutions, but also made me question my own inherent biases as well as those of society at large. The result is that I see with much greater clarity a form of racism that is not necessarily born of overt hatred or ideology, but rather a racism that most folk don't even realize they exhibit. One that is entirely subconscious and systemic, one that I myself have been guilty of, one whose form I cannot always see myself, even now.